see all the back and forth. I signed up for the things that you suggested,
Oh, those webinars?
the Penn State webinars, yeah.
Should we introduce ourselves since Kathy's here for the first time, so she can know who we all are? Sure.
I've probably seen most people on Zoom during the interviews for the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember everybody then?
I know, I remember everyone's, most of your faces. I can see, so it would be great just the names again would be fantastic.
So I'm Jamie Kime. I work for Leaf.
Armando Reyes from Mercury Woodworks.
Steph Signer, work for the public schools.
Jenny Sita.
Kathy Williams.
I'm Mark Sadowski.
Good to see everyone again.
Me too.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for coming today.
All right, so, any feedback about the suggested workshops or whatever? I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the one I shared, but
I watched the one that you shared. I thought it was worth a watch. It's,
yeah.
you know, I mean, I learned a few things that I was, made me kind of get thinking a little bit. So,
Yeah, I thought that was particularly apt to what we're doing.
yeah, and I think I'm going to take that. It's $95, but I think it's going to be worth taking that class too, that webinar class. I know that you said something about maybe the city, but paying for it, but I don't mind paying for the class myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a webinar about Shade Tree Commission boards, but it costs $95 a person. And so I didn't know if that was something the city could pay for the Urban Forest Committee members out of the Urban Forest Committee budget, or if they would have to pay for it themselves if they wanted to take it.
So, let's think creatively. Is it, how do you register for it? Just on the, who's the provider?
I don't know, I can send you
Oh,
the,
Penn State.
yeah, so I can register more than one person at the same time.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay, so it could all flow through you, and that's fine. I don't know if we could get a group to watch it.
Yeah, if I emailed it to everybody and told them to let me know if any of them wanted to, and then I would see, because it's not till like October, right?
Yeah, I think the first one's the
So we had,
6th.
so we had time to, yeah, because it's a series.
Yeah.
That's why you have to pay for it. It's like a 6 or 8
Oh,
webinar
Yeah,
series.
it's pretty intense. It's like a half a dozen meetings at 3 hours each or something.
Yeah, and so it seemed like it would be worth the money.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I love that training for our boards and commissions. We don't think about that enough.
Yeah, and it's targeted to shade tree commissions,
Yeah,
so,
I'd be on board.
Yeah.
Looking into that a little bit more.
yeah, I think we would be able to pay for it out of somewhere, out of Public Works. Because I have some money, but I don't know how much money's in the Urban Forest Committee budget, but we can, if anybody else wants to take it, then once I know how much money we need, then I can ask more seriously.
All right, well, I already signed up and paid, and I don't mind paying either. It's
Oh, you did sign up and paid for it yourself? Oh, nice.
fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey. I mean, the only way, maybe, I guess, to try to make it work, to have everyone together, but that seems kind of hard to do.
Yeah,
I think you pay for one. And then
if it were a
watch
single
but-
meeting or something.
Yeah, I mean, then.
Well, I think you can watch them individually.
Yeah, I'm saying, I guess if you want to just pay for one. Oh, you think you can just pay for one and then we all can watch it off? Oh.
No.
Oh.
Do you have to be live in the meeting, or is it something that if you miss it, it's pre-recorded and you can
The
go back
sense
to
I
it?
got is that if you were looking for certification, some kind of credit from it, that you had to be there.
I see.
But
If you're just there for informational
it
reasons.
looked like you could go back and look at things
Okay.
if you weren't looking for formal certification.
Okay.
All right. And the other one that you sent out, that was a free one.
All the rest of them were free. That was the only one that was that you had to pay for. Because for some reason, I had a whole bunch of them, so I went through them all at once. I think I sent out like 6 different webinars regarding trees. And some of them were shade trees, but some of them were other issues.
Okay.
But that one was specific to Shade Tree Commission, so I thought that would be a good one since we're a new committee.
Well, again, based on our conversation last month, there were some things that we talked about repeatedly, and basically education in one form or another was an important one, starting with the city, I think, with city crews that should be trained in proper tree maintenance. We talked about the improper mulching and so forth. So, somebody have a suggestion for proceeding with that? That doesn't seem to me like that needs an ordinance or anything. That should be something that the Public Works Department adopts as a policy to.
I emailed the new director and the bureau chief of parks how to mulch a tree properly and the reasons why it's important. And I offered to train the staff and also make a handout for them to keep in the trucks, but they have not responded to my email request.
Okay, so this committee ought to do the same thing.
Okay, I can send you the information that I sent to them.
Okay.
Or I can just follow up and
Which-
I'll ask him again too. I mean, it could, I didn't talk to him in person about it, I just sent the email, so I know Chuck Zisk, he's the new director. When I email him and then don't follow up in person, he doesn't always remember. There's a
Sure.
lot of emails, but I can follow up with him in person too.
Would it be helpful to, like, can we call or leave us, like, as a citizen comment, or just say, hey, this is a citizen concern, or a concern that's the member, as a member of this committee?
Yeah, you can always call or email the director, Chuck Zisk, or the bureau chief of parks, Phil Ernst.
I would suggest though, that, if you don't mind speaking, I'm sorry, there's protocol. Thank you.
No.
That if you have, I don't know how many issues or agenda items that you want to take on, but that a letter come from this committee asking for that to be a priority. And then they work with the arborist, and that could go to the mayor and the director of public works.
I kind of agree. I think that's the way to go. So Sarah, if you would copy me what you sent to them,
Sure.
and I'll just incorporate that. I'll write a letter.
Right. And then Mark, if you want to add any technical information, please do.
I'll share it with the group first. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I think I sent it. Did I send you a copy of what I sent? I might have sent
If you did, I didn't respond.
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna say no, Sarah, you didn't send it.
Well, I sent it to you like after the fact, saying this is what I sent to them.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if I did or
Sarah,
not.
who is the person that was in charge of what?
The director of public works
Okay.
is Chuck Zisk, and that's ZYSK. He, the former director just retired like a week ago, and so Chuck's the new director, and AJ Antolik is the new assistant director. He's the former bureau chief of the municipal garage. And then Phil Ernst is the new bureau chief, and then I believe Gary Graham is the supervisor underneath of him. So that's who I've been emailing my stuff to. Because, there's several different things they could do. Because if there's a dead tree in the park, they should notify me so I can have it removed. The other thing, I purchased 100 gator bags, and so those need to put on some of the baby trees. And if the baby trees had gator bags on them, that would help keep the weed trimmers from hitting them because it surrounds the trunk of the tree. But we probably need a few more if that's the case, because I have 360 trees that I've planted. But I just bought 100 gator bags the other day, a couple weeks ago. And the new 50 trees that we planted on the east side with the Sisters of St. Joseph, they all have gator bags on them.
Who fills those, Sarah? Who fills those bags?
The contractor fills them. The trees are guaranteed for a year, and so he helps water them. But if they're in front of someone's house, personal residence, we also ask the homeowners to help water them, because the contractor doesn't always get out there as often as he should. But if they're like in a boulevard or a city park, then only the contractor is watering them. But fortunately, we've had a pretty rainy summer,
Yes.
so we really haven't had to worry about it too much. So that's good for the trees, for getting water. It's not good for all the bacterial and fungal infections. Some of them have, but that's another story.
Let's focus on one thing.
It's good that they're getting watered.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, but the mulching, yeah. And I thought it was a pretty informative email about all the reasons why it's important and all the bad things that could happen, so.
Okay.
But we can take a look at it. And then that's a good idea, to send an official letter from the committee. I think that's really good. Thanks, Kathy. And I did ask Mr. Zisk, I did remind him of our meeting today because he did say he wants to come to some of our meetings, but he wasn't able to make it today.
Maybe in the letter we can ask him nicely. If,
Give him
you know,
the-
this is when we meet, this is a reminder of when we meet, maybe you can stop by sometime.
Yeah, because I didn't really remind him ahead of time, I only
Yeah.
reminded him today. Right before lunch. But,
So the gator bags, is that something that we can gather volunteers for? I know last time we had talked about the tree tags and gathering volunteers for other tasks like that.
yeah, and I did reach out to, well, actually Colin Hurley from Mercyhurst University reached out to me because he had Mercyhurst students to do a project this past Monday. And so I told him about all the baby trees that need they're like bamboo poles. They're not really stakes. They're the pole against the trunk, keeping the tree straight. But some of the trees are like 2 or 3 years old already, so I really need to get those poles off of them. And I mentioned that could be a possible student project for one of their other service days, and so he was interested in that. But
I know there's Gannon Day of Caring coming up sometime too.
yeah, so
And that's they just placed like a group of 7 to 10 Gannon students.
yeah, the challenge is that they're kind of spread all out over
Right.
the city.
You
But
might
there's
need-
like 50 of them on like Fairmount Parkway,
Right.
and there's a whole bunch on East 28th Street.
Are the East 28th ones close to Collegiate, like within walking distance of Collegiate?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because I work with the green team there, and we're looking to set up some of our fun projects. And if we can walk to it, that's really easy, but we can also.
They're closer
like,
to
Get a
Walmart.
van or something if we wanted, if they're in close enough proximity that in an hour, a group of students could go and take them off.
Well, I can email out the list of where they all are. All those new
So do you have
trees.
like a list of everything that you need like help with, as far as like a project list that maybe, I was thinking, I have once in a while, I have some time and spend an hour going pulling tags for you or something like that, so if there was a list of, here's what I really could use help getting done, that might be helpful.
Yeah.
Might be nice as a Google Docs.
Yes.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Yes, I can definitely do that. Because the other thing we could do too is in the fall. Well, I don't know. Fall is probably not the best time to do it, but I do tree pruning workshops. But usually I do those in the spring. But with COVID last year, they all were canceled. But since you're outside, it's something we could do this coming spring.
Right.
I don't know. I would be willing to do them in the fall. I don't know how you feel about that, Mark, but
Yeah.
I say the best time to prune a tree is whenever you have time to do it, because otherwise it won't get done. And then just remember that, and then don't prune it again for a whole year.
Yeah.
Right.
Where like some people say it has to be like late winter, early spring, and that would be the ideal time. But we're talking about public trees that aren't getting much attention, so I'd rather just prune them whenever we can.
Definitely.
So that's an option. But it's always an option. It'd be really nice if our parks guys were interested in learning how to prune trees, and then they could also prune trees. But they struggle with 50 city parks to get them all mowed and the weeds cut and stuff. So I don't know if they have time to do that.
That's one of the things that I think we need to do, is to somehow reduce some of the areas where they're mowing. Today when I was driving, there was one coming down. I swear I thought it was coming off the sidewalk and into the street because it was so steep. But that's another whole topic.
Was it in a city park or something?
No, it was on 38th Street.
Oh,
It's crazy.
like the boulevard?
Hmm?
The boulevard?
It was 38th Street and near the zoo.
Oh, okay.
So it was pretty steep. But anyway, like I said, that's another topic.
Yeah. Because I have trained parks guys a long time ago, but they're not there, the same people aren't there anymore. And I've trained a couple streets guys quite a while ago, and so they're out there pruning, but they're not doing baby trees. But I can, yeah, I can put a list together and then put that in the Google Drive. Is everybody comfortable using the Google Drive? Nice.
Yeah, it works. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that would be an easy place for us to all just kind of, if you find a resource that you like, I mean,
Add it.
email it out too, but then you can put it in that doc and then, I don't know, because then maybe you have an hour and you're like, oh, I should look into what has been circulated, and you can't find it in email, so maybe it's on the doc. I think it's helpful. And for lists and agendas and things.
Sounds good. What else have we got?
Did anybody look at the mission statements at all? Were we interested in having a mission statement? I love mission statements. But keep
I
us
didn't really get a
focused.
chance, but, you know, I think it's
Yeah.
important, definitely.
Yeah, well, it's stuff we can still look over. I don't know, and maybe in some of the, I didn't get a chance to look at what you sent, John. Did it have anything in there about Shade Tree Commissions having mission statements or anything? Or?
No, I don't remember that.
Okay.
I really like the ones that refer to like ecosystem and ecology more widely than just saying the street trees, because that seemed to fit into like, the things that we talked about last time, and thinking about it more as a system rather than just trees being placed in certain areas.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why I like it being called an urban forest committee instead of shade tree commission. Because shade tree is just like one tree out there all by itself, where the urban forest is like the whole community of trees working together. Well, maybe I'll email them.
Does someone want to take a shot at developing one? I mean, you got a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really good language in a lot of these.
I mean, do we want to just come up with the keywords that are important? Would that be helpful?
Good idea.
Yeah.
Or like prioritize
I mean, I
them,
like-
1, 2, 3 or something. Yeah, because they all are saying the same thing, but all in different ways.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of having the big picture, like you're talking about having it more of a big picture. I think it should maybe include the word tree in it, maybe somewhere, because that, you know, maybe, but
Well, and then to also incorporate that it's not just trees, it's everything else that makes up the urban forest. But
the right term would be
Yes.
maybe ecosystem is, I don't know, but.
Are you comfortable taking a shot at it, Stephanie, and then having the group comment, or do you want, are you
Sure.
ready
You
for that?
mean right now or
No,
before the
like-
next meeting?
Yeah.
Next meeting.
Right
We'll
this
just
second.
email
I
our
can do
ideas
that.
to
All right,
Stephanie.
thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to send her anything, if you feel certain words need to be in there, just email her.
Yeah, that would be.
Or ones you like the best or something, to give her an example, that's great.
I like number 6. The UFC mission is to serve in an advisory capacity on matters of environmental stewardship, specifically concerning the care and planting of trees and the urban forest by advocating sound arboricultural and urban forest management practices. Like, I think that's kind of nice, but maybe using different language instead of planting of trees. I don't know.
All right, well, we'll let you come up with something that then we can discuss next month.
So I'll share with you, we went through an exercise very similar to this with our historic preservation task force on how we actually kind of pulled from the group, you know, their concerns, their ideas, and then came up with a vision statement through that. It was a really easy facilitation tactic to pull it out. I think you could lead it beautifully. So I'll just share with you, it's just really 1 or 2 questions that kind of raises meaningful terms from everyone.
Could you send that to me also, Kathy?
Yeah, I'll put it in the Google Drive, just let me invite you to it.
Sure.
So I'll share that with you. you have any questions, you let me know. But it's pretty straightforward.
Thanks. I think Patty, you had mentioned a liaison.
Oh,
Not a liaison?
yeah, that was just, again, once I left here last time, I had lots of ideas, of course. But that was one of them, is because we were I think Freda was talking about the planning commission, and it's like, oh, well, it would probably be a good idea if we at least knew what was going on as a committee. Not that we could necessarily or needed to impact that, but at least to know what was going on, so that if we thought we were interested in making some suggestions, then that might be helpful. And I don't know what the logistics of that would be. But again, part of it is just to sort of promote that, hey, we're here, we're interested, we're involved. Because it may be that somebody would want to use our resources, but if they don't know that we're here, they can't use them.
So the mechanism for requiring planting of trees by developers is through the zoning ordinance, I presume?
That's a good question. It would typically be through the SALDO, which is the subdivision and land development ordinance. There might be something in the zoning that would be the SALDO, and the SALDO is both, the SALDO and zoning are both enforced by the zoning officer.
Yeah, the problem is there's not a checklist to mark if there's trees involved in the project.
Yeah.
And so like, there's a project on East 10th Street that they didn't know they had to speak with me at all. And then there's 5 trees involved.
So I will share with the group, because I've been pretty vocal about this. So the planning commission, the zoning hearing board are all under the Department of Planning. The SALDO is horrifically old. I mean, you could have chiseled it out of stone if you wanted to do what we have. I'm sorry, I'm going to be very blunt. It was written when Joyce Savacchio was mayor, and it has not been updated since. So there is a lot of work in the SALDO. It is top priority for me and the planning commission to take that on. And you bring up an excellent point. So right now it's just in my head to do. It's not really on the schedule, but it needs to be top. And I put the planning commission on notice that we're going to open up this can of worms and update the SALDO. But I think you bring up an excellent point that as they're doing that, there's groups like this that need to be at the table. You know, Sarah will be at the table, but there's also this group that needs to be at the table. Historic Preservation or Historic Review Commission will be at the table. Developers will, certainly want to incorporate. Another area that, just so you kind of see the connection with the SALDO, land development ordinances are your plans for development. You come in and you say, this is everything I want to do on this property. Zoning basically says what you can and cannot do on the property. And the SALDO is what you actually are, how you build it, how it's designed is through the SALDO. We did a bike and head master plan for the city, and a complete streets policy of how we look at streets as we pave them and improve them to make sure we incorporate multimodal elements as we move forward. That needs to be part of the SALDO, and it's challenging to move a plan like that forward when you don't have it instituted in policies and regulations. So, sorry, just kind of want to bring that back. So I think the SALDO is where that idea would be planted.
And what's the acronym you keep saying?
SALDO, Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance. Go ahead and look it up. The PDF is a scanned document of the 20, 30-year-old.
Is it done on a mimeograph or something?
And as far as residential tree planting goes, it's in the urban forest ordinance right now that if you remove a tree, you have to replant 2 trees, but it's not enforced.
And that's great that it's in there, but does the normal homeowner know that that's what the expectation is?
Well, I could tell them that, and then they say, well, they don't want to replant. And then I have no way to make them, like, to say that they have to or what. Will
Well,
they be
can't you
fined?
deny them the permit?
I could deny the permit, and then they cut the tree down anyway, and then would we enforce the
And then what do we
fine?
do? Okay.
I mean,
I
it's
mean, what if
$1,000
their
fine.
property is really small though, and there really isn't a good space for 2 new trees?
Well, what they could do is offer to plant a tree somewhere else, like in a city boulevard or a park, or to donate money instead of planting a tree to their urban forest committee.
But I guess my question is, if I'm Joe Blow homeowner and I don't really care and I don't know, and we've had a lot of turnover in the city recently of new people buying homes. If I don't know, is it anywhere out there, or do I have to call and contact you to say, hey, I want to cut this tree down? Or does anybody even know that, and I'm not saying that ignorance is bliss, but
I'm sure there's people that cut trees down every day that
Yeah.
don't know they need a permit. And unless somebody calls in and reports them, or I happen to drive by and
Yeah.
see it, or somebody else does, then yeah,
Yeah.
they're not, that's not enforced either.
so I guess what I was going back to is, again, education of the general public, of the homeowner, because we have had a lot of homeowners change in the city in the last year. Just like the whole sidewalk thing that we were talking about last time. I was blown away by that. I had no idea that if the sidewalk was not flat, that I needed to do anything about it, because I'm like, no, that's the city's. So I guess what I was looking towards, long-term goal, is some education to the general public of some of the more common things that you encounter, such as a sidewalk that is uneven or has crumbled or something like that, or if you want to remove a tree, here are the steps that you need to do, and this is what needs to happen, and have that out there for the general public. Not everybody's going to go and look at it or seek it out, but at least it's out there for some of us who follow the rules regardless, that
Right.
we know what they are.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There definitely needs to be more education about it. But I don't know. I don't know if it's because I've been the arborist for 17 years now, and the people are wearing me down or what. But like the homeowners, like for example, they want the trees lifting their sidewalk, and it's the second time, and their sidewalk's all cracked, and they want to cut the tree down. Okay, well normally I don't like to allow them to cut the tree down. I think there's other things they could do. But like I said, it's wearing me down to the point it's like, okay, well then you at least have to pay $50 and then cut the tree down, because then they start complaining, well, they're spending all this money to replace the sidewalk, and then now they're not even allowed to cut the tree. Or, okay, well now you can cut the tree, but now you have to pay $50 too. So a lot of times if they agree to replant, then I don't charge them the $50. But people want to cut these trees down and not replant. And so, like, I just need more support. Like, if the Urban Forest Committee thinks it's important enough to enforce those types of things, then that's what I need your support to do, because people here at the city think if it's tearing up the sidewalk, that is a good reason to cut a tree down. Even though I don't necessarily think that is, if there's other options available. Now, sometimes there isn't other options, but sometimes there are. And so that's one issue. And then the other thing they complain about is this trees getting into their septic lines. And I usually do deny trees being cut down for that. But then, unless the tree's right over where the line goes and then they have to take it out to repair the line, then they have to cut the tree down. But if they just are complaining the roots are in the line, I try to deny it. But if they keep complaining over and over again, eventually I'll get overruled by my boss and he'll say, let them cut the tree down. They just have to pay the $50. But the trees are worth more than $50.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So the fact that you only have to pay $50 is kind of silly compared to the value of an entire tree. But at the same time, if it's causing all this damage to your property and you're constantly have to repair your sewer lines or repair your sidewalks, I mean, it's just a difficult situation. And so I don't really, like I said, I used to be more hardcore about it, but I'm not as hardcore as I used to be, because it is really expensive to repair all those things.
Yeah.
You know?
Just the educational piece of letting people know the value of the tree, because some people cut them down not for those issues, just because they want more light in the backyard, or they're afraid that, like, or the leaf, what I hear a lot is like, the leaves are messy.
Yeah.
So if we cut down all the trees, then we won't have
Yes.
wet leaves on the sidewalk or on the car, or landlords where I live will cut down trees, and I don't think they're getting permission or paying the fines. They're just like, my job is easier if I cut down all the trees, then I don't have to pay someone to rake the
Yeah.
leaves.
Yeah.
So if information could go out, like, for those, to try to prevent some of those trees
Yeah.
from being cut down, where they don't, it's not costing that much money, it's just viewed as a nuisance. And yeah, like you said, for new homeowners or new landlords, like young developers or whatever, having some materials that help them see the value versus just the nuisance might prevent some trees from being cut down just for that reason, like before trying to address these
And that
more
would be part of
complicated
the educational
situations.
campaign too. And I know that tree map thing that Relief is using to track all their trees, you can also put in full-grown trees in it. It just wouldn't count towards the Relief numbers as new trees, but you can put any tree in that program, and then it tells you the number of like stormwater absorbed, the amount of carbon dioxide reduced, and it gives you a monetary value of the worth of that tree. And so that would be something else we could promote for people to enter their trees into that program, or as I look up trees to under them, or as we look up trees together to enter that in, because then that gives you an actual monetary, more of a value of what that tree's worth besides just, they're beautiful and they make oxygen. 'Cause that's always what I want to say to people. I don't like leaves. Well, do you like to breathe? But I don't. That's what I'd like to say.
Suggestion comes from where I lived before, so the city would send out bills every month for whatever things. And in those bills would be little newsletters or little informational things where they would tell you things that were important to know.
I think we can put little flyers in the water and garbage bills, but I'd have to look in how that's done, but I think that is something we could look into doing.
That's a way to get to everybody who
It's true.
is an owner in
How about
one way or
social?
another.
Does the city get
Or
good
rental.
interaction on social?
Yeah, because we're on social, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all that next door.
Some other avenues to put these resources on?
We were kind of, I feel like last time we were talking about this
Yeah,
a
we were
little
talking
bit.
about creating
Mhm.
some.
Are we,
Yeah.
I mean, are we as a committee allowed to have like an Instagram or a Facebook page that maybe posts resources like what we're talking about?
I don't see why not.
I mean,
I don't know. I'd have to look. I'd have to
Yeah.
ask. unless
Even not
Kathy
as
knows the
an
answer.
official, like in an official capacity as the city of Erie, but just like,
could be like
I mean, we
Erie
can
Urban
probably,
Forest.
yeah, we can probably just come up with
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you, the water bills, ours is paid automatically. I don't even open any of the emails.
Yeah, you
I'm
wouldn't get
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
It would be,
Well,
It's a good
doing
idea,
both.
and not everybody is that lazy, but,
There's other avenues.
yeah.
yes, exactly, because different people access.
On a
things
related
differently.
subject, who's driving this new stormwater ordinance?
The study is being administered by the engineering department. I mean, I've been involved because it's a county planning funded project.
And trees and stormwater, like this. So it's another example of how we need to have this thing kind of this knowledge for each of those different ordinances, the SALDO and the stormwater. Trees are certainly a component in that, and I would love to see a system that rewards people for having trees in terms of paying for stormwater maintenance,
And like a green space credit,
Yeah.
green infrastructure credit for rain gardens and trees and
Works
native
a lot better than
plantings.
punishment.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So how do we do this? How do we infiltrate all this?
How do we make our presence known?
Oh,
We're not
oh.
infiltrating, we're just making our presence known, and then we'll infiltrate.
The most successful model that I've seen recently that we've actually talked about is a great model. It was the Historic Preservation Task Force. The task force right at the sort of towards the beginning of their work had a mission, goals, basically their bylaws only work for 2 years on recommendations, and then it would take a life of its own, or it would need to end. So it was basically, what should the city be doing in historic preservation, from nothing to a lot? And they immediately went to a lot, and came up with a report and recommendations. They already had a relationship with council, had been giving them updates. That first study session was great because everyone was able to put faces to the names. So that, I think that's probably a good first step, and talk about some of the challenges you're seeing already in ordinances and policies, things like that. And then when, with the task force, by the time they were done with their report, there was already buy-in from council on every recommendation that they suggested, and they moved forward with all the recommendations. So that was extremely helpful, because what Sarah wouldn't tell you, but I will, is that if it's all flowing through the staff person, and they're the ones coming to city council, it looks like there is power of just the one person is asking for this, but if it's the group saying, this is what we need, and this is why it's important, it holds a lot more weight with the policymakers, which is city council and administration. And you can all talk the talk, like Sarah can walk out the room and you can all say, this is our goals, this is the reason, this is what it's important, and here's why it's important. And that's really powerful.
Okay, I think that's what we should aim at. I mean,
Absolutely.
we'll start with the mission statement, but get those things in order. And I think we should be looking at other aspects of city operations too, because it's all really tied together, and it's easy to neglect some part of it, to look at them in silos instead of as one big.
Yeah, Kathy's exactly right. I mean, that's why the alternative landscape ordinance never got pushed through to its full amount, because there was probably 60 different groups who worked on it, but I was the only one who was going in front of city council, so they referred to it as my ordinance. And I'm like, it's not my ordinance. Thanks for thinking of it that way, but it just never got through. And so now it's only like a 3-sentence paragraph. It's kind of sad.
Okay.
But
Well, that should be our goal, and to prepare to meet with city council.
And just be mindful that come January, it'll be more new faces.
Yeah,
You'll have
well,
or
yeah.
maybe you just, that's your goal, is by January you'll have your own, I call it an agenda, but what are the things, the highest priority issues that you want to address? Here's how you plan on addressing them. You're coming up with a very specific task, and get their buy-in. Because if they all look at you and say, I don't care about any of that, we probably don't need to meet anymore, right? But that's really important to get, that's the place you need to get to.
Sure.
Is this important? Is it worth your time? You're giving up your time.
And I think it's important to make the connection to why it's important for the people. Why are the trees, how does the health of the trees affect the health of the people? Because that's what it comes down to. I mean, they're not going to take money away from police and fire to plant trees, but they need to see how trees help reduce all the health issues, and reduce asthma, reduce heart attacks, help improve the quality of life. Kids get better grades in school. I mean, they don't know. It's all big educational things they don't understand, they haven't heard, or they don't believe,
Well, and they all have their own focus of other things, and until you present it to them and say, these are the reasons.
Yeah, I mean, having beautiful green spaces with trees and shade makes people more go outside, and they meet their neighbors, they talk to each other, it creates a whole better community. But they need, like Kathy said, me just saying that all the time, they're just like, oh yeah, Sarah, we know.
Sarah the tree hugger.
In fact, at study sessions with the task force, I'm the one who spoke the least, and anyone who knows me, that's really unusual. But they all had their own parts, and it was very powerful.
Okay.
It worked very, very well.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's going to be one of our goals, right?
That's our direction.
Well, has anyone come across whether it's a city or a committee like ours, someone who's telling that story really well about the benefits that trees bring, the ways that trees and humans and city spaces are all
Like, is there somebody doing that right now in a really compelling way that we'd be able to, like, that might help us, remind us of things that we know are true and help us see how we could communicate it?
I just-
Kind of not just like a bullet list of like, they do this, 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 this,
Yeah.
but tell that story and show the difference of like a neighborhood with trees versus a neighborhood without trees, or the differences that come when more trees go in, and like those benefits taking place.
I just submitted a big request for the RERP money for the trees, and there's a whole bunch of that stuff in there. I can share what I ended
Yeah.
up with that
And there are some different
and some of those
resources.
studies.
So maybe that's something else that we can put on G Drive and sort of,
Because if we could even get some of that out ahead of, like, if we know we're gonna be going before council and we're gonna be putting out a press release or something saying, hey, these are the recommendations of the Urban Forest Committee, having some things being shared online and something go on the news, just even little videos and little infographics and stuff where people start saying, oh, that makes sense to me. Oh, I planted a tree, or my neighbor planted a tree. Like, having that kind of circulating in the public and in like city council, that can be really helpful before we take our requests or whatever we take to them, just so some people are like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about this, or I kind of see what you're saying, so it's not as brand new as us bringing it to them.
But-
yeah, I think the ideas of Jenny and Mark and Jamie of getting social media and whatever we can to sort of begin thinking about that, even if it's not the full on. But yeah, I think that's a great idea.
There are some larger tree planting projects that are more national that I receive their emails, and then I look at what they're saying, and I kind of don't use their language, but I'm like, okay, this is really effective message, and then I try to, you know, so I'm sure that in my brain there's a lot of these things floating around, and I could share them with
Yeah, I can start
everybody.
looking, and just sometimes you see something and you're like, yeah, like I would send that to
Yeah.
the people in my life who aren't like, don't love trees as much as me, but like they would, this message would resonate with them, and then we could talk about it.
Is there still a thing, sometimes you drive into towns and they have those signs like Tree City USA, is that still a program?
Yeah, it's a Tree City USA, and we've been a Tree City USA, I think, 14 years maybe. And so we have signs on
Really?
Route 5 and
One by Reed Manufacturing.
the Bayfront
Yeah.
Connector.
I know I've seen them before, but I don't know if that's something that you have, is that like a
You only get
continual?
2 signs when you're Tree City USA. Every year I apply. To become a Tree City USA, you have to have an Urban Forest Committee or Shade Tree Commission, and you have to have an ordinance and certain things, and you have to be able to spend $3 per person. And so my Shade Tree Committee budget is not enough to meet that match, but I count the compost collection 3 months out of the year when we collect leaves, because the leaves fall from the trees. And so that budget is a huge multi-million-dollar budget, and so I can get like $200,000 to $300,000 out of that budget that I put towards it, and so then we're able to qualify.
Okay.
And so we've been a Tree City USA since,
Don't you have to have an Arbor Day
2008.
celebration too?
hmm?
Don't you have to have an Arbor Day celebration too to be part of the Tree City?
Yes, but it doesn't have to be that big. I mean, you can just plant a tree, and like League
One
has an
tree.
Arbor Day celebration every year with school kids, and so
Yeah.
I used to try to get tree companies to volunteer to prune trees that day for Arbor Day, and adopt different parks through our Adopt a Park program, and different tree companies would adopt a park or adopt a boulevard and then prune the trees, but it didn't get a lot of support from the administration at the time, and so they felt that they never got enough out of it. Like, you know, I'm sure it would be different now because Mayor Schember would be happy to show up and thank them and everybody, but in previous administrations, they didn't always make it, and so then after a while, nobody wanted to do it anymore. But that was kind of a cool thing, because even though we weren't planting trees, the maintenance, the pruning of the trees is one thing the city is all on the responsibility of the homeowner, and the city can't help with, and so that, currently anyway, and so that's a really nice thing to do for Arbor Day. And then it gets the tree company to adopt that park, and then a lot of times they'll go back. I think even Mark, you adopted a park in the
It
past.
was Jake. It was Jake.
With J. Thomas Tree Service, yeah. He'd adopted Washington Park in the past. And Bill Bentley, Taylor Tree Service has adopted a park before, and TLC isn't in business anymore, but they did, and a couple of the others. And so there's different activities you can do. So that's one thing we could do too if we wanted to have more of an Arbor Day event.
The only reason I thought of that is if we weren't doing something like that, like presenting this, because sometimes when you're dealing maybe with some of the personalities who are on a city council, if we bring the idea that you guys can, by helping us on this committee, we could make the city a tree city USA. And then they can feel like, oh, because of us on city council, we were able to establish this thing, and maybe that's how they we can kind of get their support for doing some of these other programs. If we can show that through that initiative, it brought some sort of recognition to either the city itself or something like
Well, we
that.
can always promote it more, the Tree City USA, that we're a Tree City USA.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that was like a one.
And like, and sometimes the council members themselves like to get involved, like Ruby Jenkins' husband, when she was a councilwoman, she loved to have tree plantings. And so she would do them for Arbor Day a lot, and she really liked to get involved. But,
So will this coming year be the 15th year? Is that?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but it's
If
been
it was a
since 2008.
significant number, we could play that up
So
to.
it's 8, yeah. 14 years? 16?
Wait.
Wait.
I'm not fast math, like
14.
That's what I'm saying. I can't think
Yeah,
of
one to grow on.
I think it's 14. But I don't know.
yeah, 14.
And while you were talking, I was paying attention, but I'm wondering if we could, several months down the road, get our act together and do presentations to, say, the Jefferson Society or other community groups as well. And again, that's not something we can do right this minute, but again, to start talking about it so it's not brand new when we walk into city council. So again, something else to think about is what other groups could we start talking to. Again, we have to come up with our mission and goals.
I just thought of something, Armando. There is a Tree City USA Growth Award, and the city's never gotten it. But if you did some sort of a new project or a campaign, or like, it's pretty easy to get the award. But that's something we could look into. I can send the information out, and we could get a growth award. And so that would be like a new recognition that we could get.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we come
That
to
would be
if
good.
we come to city council and say, hey, these are some things we want to do, these are some things. And by the way, if we were able to accomplish some of these things, we could bring this award to, we can help facilitate this award to the city. And if you're sitting on city council, that kind of makes,
It looks good
that
to
would
them.
make me say like,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
It's
I'd like to
good.
help be
Thank
a part of
you.
It's
making
good
that, you know what I
publicity.
mean? So,
Yeah. Mutually beneficial.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah.
How far in advance do we need to start thinking about Arbor Day?
Thinking about what?
Arbor Day.
As far in advance as we want to. I mean, it depends on what kind of event you want to have. We can start thinking about it now if we wanted to. Because it comes sooner than you think, but it just depends what you want to do, how big of an event you want to do.
Did I dream this, or did we talk about having a timeline at the last meeting or something? Or did I imagine
I don't recall that.
Not on my notes.
that? Okay.
It sounds helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we've
Yes.
already like said a couple things for city
Yeah.
council or for.
Yeah, the city council study session, like have a timeline of when we would like certain things to happen and when we need to start
Does it make
preparing
sense?
for them.
Does it make sense for us to wait until a new city council is
Yeah.
brought in?
I think that should be our goal
Because that gives
for
us a
when
lot
we
of time
have-
between now and then to,
It
Yeah.
won't be that long,
Yeah.
when you think about it.
No.
Because, once you have a clear understanding of what it is you want to accomplish,
Mhm.
you can start working on those things. So that'll be September.
Right.
We have October, November, December, those are 4 months.
Right,
You want to
right.
be prepared. In January is your date, you just want to inundate the new one, the new council, which is not a bad strategy before they become jaded.
As they're like running, because don't they like amp up their public presence as they're running and kind of like fielding questions from citizens about what like maybe we could have a united sense of like, if we go to something or if we're in contact with people who are running for council, we could have a couple questions that we ask them about like what's your policy on this, or if you're elected, would you do this, or would you talk to us about this, just so we have a sense of like who might get elected and who might be the one to approach who's like, yeah, I'll meet with you, oh yeah, we'll get you on our agenda, like feeling that out.
Yeah, so maybe we have a list of questions and we could even send them to all of the candidates just to see what they say. Is there any conflict of interest or anything?
That's a good
with that?
idea, just like in political season, to maybe have a 3 or 4 question thing to send to the candidates and say, hey, we're a, urban forest committee. Here's a few
Yeah.
questions we'd like to get your feedback on. If you happen to make it to city council, we'd like a chance for you to talk. But yeah, we can
Yeah.
get some feedback from at least the people who are running.
Yeah.
Conflict of interest,
Okay.
as long as you're not campaigning for
Nope.
one or the other on
Okay.
as a
Right.
group.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it would be
You're not collecting money for their campaign.
no, it'd be open to whoever's running.
Okay.
And you can also do the same with existing council members.
Mhm.
We'll-
Okay. Yeah, more questions for council.
John, I have a question about grants. As far as the next round of the multi-municipal, ECHA grants, Northeast is willing to be a partner on a new, tree planting grant, and the city could be. Did you, through Relief, have any connections to any of the other municipalities? You or Jamie, to see if you wanted to have more?
Actually,
Because you,
those are the 2 municipalities we're connected with.
Northeast.
Huh?
You're saying those are the 2 we're connected with?
I say, no, the 2 municipalities we're most connected with are Northeast and the city.
Yeah.
well, I didn't know if any of the schools you reached out to, because like, that you did workshops at Wattsburg Elementary, so that
yeah.
would be Green Township. If we could reach out to them or any of the other, like,
Sure.
the schools, the municipalities of the schools that you did projects in.
Mhm.
Because we can just apply with 2 municipalities, but it would be a better project if we had more than just 2. Because when Jessica applied through the COG, we had like 8. Not that you need 8, but
Yeah.
2's kind
Well,
of
green, definitely. I
lame.
mean, we did a lot of work with Wattsburg.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to, I mean, they have that playground.
Yeah.
There's no trees there at all,
Where?
where the Green Township Municipal Building is.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
There's no, I mean, even to put it there, I mean, Green Township's pretty rural, but that particular area where the municipal building is in that playground, there's no trees at all.
Mhm.
And like Wesleyville might be interested in it because they had a few trees, and like Harbor Creek. Some of the other former members, they still had locations where they wanted trees.
Mhm.
I can follow up with them, but Dave Skelly was the big organizer for that, for talking to all the other municipalities, where I focus more on identifying which trees to plant and where. And he retired from Sea Grant, and I don't know that Tom Cermak is that excited about it,
Mm.
the project. He's more into invasive species removal. But, so that's what I was thinking, maybe the municipalities where you did workshops with the schools.
Yeah.
Because Union City was involved before too, but they're still really rural. I mean, I don't really like planting trees with the grant money in rural municipalities just because they already have so many trees. I think it's better to plant them, the urban municipalities need the trees more.
I think it's better to plant them everywhere.
I don't know, when we went to Corey, they have so many trees in Corey, it was crazy. They have a lot of trees, John.
But do they understand the value of them?
Yeah, they have a very active shade tree
Okay.
commission. And it was all men, which is a surprise because a lot of times, like environmentalists, it's usually a lot of times more women. So no offense to the men here, I'm glad you're here, but like a lot of times there's more women involved. And it's it's a group of all older gentlemen, and they like are really, really passionate about their trees. Like they love trees out there. But every single site they showed us where they want to do trees, there was already a lot of trees, but they might be a good contact for the relief program if you wanted to go out, reach out to Corey, because they have a very active shade tree commission. And some of their projects weren't ready for trees to be planted yet. Like there was a big development projects along the railroad out there, which could benefit from a lot of trees, but it wasn't installed yet. And I'm like, we're not planting trees when you haven't done the construction work, because the construction work's gonna damage all the baby trees, like it's dumb. And so, I don't know how far they've progressed, but it's been like 2 or 3 years since we went out there.
And that's a matching grant.
Right. It is a matching grant. So Northeast is willing to match. They want 25 trees and they have 8,000, they're willing to match it. Their share, they have the money to match it.
Okay.
And the city has the money to match it. And depending, the city might be able to match more than our share if I can guarantee the trees are planting. Like my tree, urban forest, the tree budget for planting and removing trees is more than everybody's share, where the city can provide most of the match, but they won't let me count the money for the trees, the removals, even though they used to. So I can only count the planting money, and that's harder for me to guarantee because if we have a really bad storm year,
Yeah.
the money gets used up. But I can probably,
What's
if we
the
get a
deadline for-
CDBG fund grant, I mean, I could probably still guarantee like 20,000, at least 10, like, it just depends.
What's the deadline for that?
I don't remember. I think it's in September. I don't know if it's September or October. Because we've been talking about it for a while now.
Yeah.
But Northeast just had their meeting, their shade tree committee last week, and they said they definitely have the match money for 25 trees. So, I mean, the city and Northeast, like I said, could put in an application just with the two of them, but it'd be nice if we got a couple other places.
All right, we'll talk about that at relief.
Okay.
So Jenny, do you have ideas that you want for Arbor Day?
Of course.
I'm gonna be ignorant, when is Arbor Day? Is it May?
April.
April.
It's the fourth
Okay.
Friday.
Friday?
Or
Okay.
April, yeah, the last.
Might make sense to try to do a bigger thing now that you have us to help and get
Yeah,
our,
it'd be nice
get
to
our
do
word out and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
get on the news and
Yeah, it'd be nice to
Make it
do
a
something
little
fun.
bigger.
Is Earth Day?
Sometimes.
It's usually like,
Earth Day is April
Closer to the
22nd, it's
20th,
always
yeah.
the 22nd,
The-
and Arbor Day is always the last Friday, so it's usually the 28th, 29th, 27th. So they're within 1 week of each other.
So do
And,
you want to put a committee?
Mayor Filippi planted a tree for Arbor Day out in Perry Square. I can show you which tree it is if you were interested. It's a baby oak. It's like
What?
a teenager now. Mayor Filippi planted a tree for Arbor Day like
Oh.
Nice.
17 years ago. And Ruby has one planted.
The multi-municipal grants are open February 2021 and close April 30th.
Oh, there's not a fall one? There's not a fall one?
So February we're looking at?
So it's February to April.
Oh, so when did you tell April? I
this
thought
kind
there
of
was
rings
a
a
fall
bell now. I
one that
feel
was
like I
due in
remember it
September.
being farther out.
I didn't know that they would have, I don't think they don't have two rounds.
Yeah, they used to have 2 rounds.
They were, yeah.
Mission Main Street, but
And I think they're willing to be flexible too, AGRA.
I'm almost
If
positive
AGRA knew
if-
that there were people willing, that there were municipalities willing to do it, I think they would
Yeah, I
respond
thought it
appropriately.
was like September 24th or something. I thought it had a September deadline. But I don't know, maybe there wasn't enough interest or something. They canceled that round. I don't know.
could be, September. Multi-municipal.
So I want to share with everybody my experience last week. As part of relief, we are planning to plant a tiny forest, and we're working with Mercyhurst. And we're going to plant it on the grounds of Mercyhurst, and we want that to just be the first of many. A tiny forest is is an idea that was developed by a man in Japan named Miyawaki, who after the Second World War, Japan had cut down so many trees to support the war effort. The corporations came in and replanted, but they planted plantations. They planted monocultures of particular trees. And 20, 30 years later, they realized it's not working. We don't have forests. We have these sickly plantations. And so they went to this guy named Miyawaki. And he developed this system for reforestation that has come to be known as tiny forests. And it's a pretty simple concept. you can plant the forest in a very small area, as little as 30 by 60 feet, but they could also be much larger. And you dig the soil deep, dig it down at least a couple feet. You incorporate organic matter into the soil. And depending on where they're doing it, this took off in India, so they plant thousands of them in India. They're planting them in Europe the last couple of years. They planted 100 in Holland this year. They planted them in France and Germany and the United Kingdom and so forth. I can only find, I think there are 4 in the United States, or maybe 3, one in Canada. But one of them is in York, PA. And I went to visit it. So you dig the soil deep, and incorporate the organic matter, and then you plant all the species at once. So whereas natural forest progression, there's a succession of different kinds of plants that grow, you plant them all at once. So you plant the ground cover, the shrubberies, the mid-canopy, and the canopy trees all at once. And you plant them very close together. And there are 2 huge benefits. The biggest one being that they grow extremely fast. And that's for 2 reasons. For one is that by planting all these different trees at once and making sure that you inoculate the soil with that, could be as little as a bucket of forest soil from a healthy forest. You introduce the fungal components that create the mycorrhizal networks between the different trees. And by planting them close together, that's collaboration. And then by planting them close together, you get competition. So they're competing for sunlight while they're collaborating in terms of water and minerals through their root systems. And they grow extremely fast. I was stunned to see this forest in York, their first version of it, which is now in its 3rd year. And there are literally trees that are pushing 20 feet tall.
Do you thin it, John, or do you let it naturally just do its own thing, like a natural forest would? Or do you go in and try to do management, or do you just leave it? You just let it do its own thing?
It manages itself.
Gotcha.
So this one that's in its 3rd year, it already has what it looks like a forest floor. You can squeeze into it a little bit, and it looks like the forest floor. It's leaves and whatever. And so they have the forester there. This is a place called Horn Farm. They took an old farm that had been in continuous agriculture for several hundred years, but not using the best possible practices. So there are streams that would need to have their riparian buffers restored, and the forests haven't been managed well. They've been cut indiscriminately and so forth. So using that as their inspiration, they've tried using the Miyawaki method in a variety of different ways. So he started us on a little tour of the different plantings they have, and with these things that they're like this. And I'm trying to remember, I have to look at my notes, my videotape of it, but a variety of species that they planted, and they're like this already. And I said, oh, you planted these how many months ago? He said, we planted these 75 days ago.
Wow.
I've never seen anything like it. I mean, relief, it's caused me to think about how we do relief differently. The rate of growth is incredible. And in fact, they're now using this system as a means of growing seedlings to propagate other forests. So they just plant them really close together. Lewis, the forester there, did last year planted a small forest using just green stakes, just, cuttings. You cut off of, and stick it in the ground. It's amazing. They look just amazing. And this year he planted one just from seeds. And they're already up like this.
Wow.
Just from seeds. So the possibilities are enormous. But
So what is the
it's
theory?
kind of hard to think about how to apply it to an urban situation where you're planting a tree and there's another tree that's over there. How do you, a big part of it is connecting them and having them, that combination of collaboration and competition is how to employ that to the best effect. I'm going to try to work up. I did videotape him talking. I was just, my jaws hanging the whole time he was talking, and we're walking around. So,
What made the trees grow faster? Just because they're planted close together, or did they do something else too?
It sounds like
They're
because they could-
assuring that the mycorrhizal network is established
Oh, in the ground.
in the ground. Yeah. So
It's amendments, right? You're just amending.
they've inoculated, in some of them they inoculated, but he said then he's taken to just taking, take a bucket full of earth there, goes into the forest, spreads it around and takes a bucket full of earth out of the forest and brings it back and
using
scatters it.
mitochondria then, powder, then, is that what they inoculate the soil with, the powder?
They inoculated the roots.
Oh, the roots before they plant them.
Before they planted them. That's what they started doing. And
Gotcha.
now I think he's just doing this where he just uses forest soil.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when we did the planting 1,000 seedlings with the housing authority, they had several different plots where we planted 100 trees in a very small area together, but over half of them died the first year, and then half would die again, and half would die again. One of those plots is on Parade Street just down from where you are,
Right.
and it's only like 8 trees left.
Well, that's because they took them out.
They're still there. Well, they kept dying, but that's when I was wondering what they did. But nobody did anything to the soil there. The soil wasn't amended in any way.
Right. They just planted them there. So I think fundamentally you have to do those two things. You have to prepare the soil so that you have good soil. Amazing thing is, he had two plots side and separated by a healthy swath of grass between them. And this one, they planted according to the Milwaukee method, and this one they planted more conventionally, just planted seedlings. And the amazing thing was that at this end of this plot here, they hooked into the mycorrhizal network of this plot here, and all the trees at this end were much larger than toward the other end of it. It was remarkable.
This would be a great thing to do with schools.
Absolutely,
Do
absolutely.
you make a plant list? Do you try to mimic
Oh, yeah.
our forest here, or do you just create your own? You can just create your
Well-
own species, or you try to use ground covers that are native, I would imagine, and
Everything's native.
Yeah.
That's the way they've done it. That's the way they did it in India, that's the way they're doing it in Europe. So it's different everywhere. And so in New York, they're planting a lot of the same trees that we have. And just a selection of local natives.
That's a
and
very cool concept.
It's quite remarkable. I would like to, we would like to see a tiny forest planted on lots of locations. It'd be great to have one at every school,
We have a lot of vacant land in the city.
We do.
Over 55 acres from the groundwork study, where they're trying to figure out what can we do with the land that brings value to the neighborhood and has some things for neighbors to do and green space, and is also good for the environment, for stormwater, for wildlife. So,
This is all of that.
and what did you say the size for the minimum size? that-
Really, based on what I saw there in York, I've been saying 30 by 60 because that's what number I got early on when I discovered these, was that a year or so ago? But based on what they're doing in York, It can be very small. In fact, it can be a strip, you know, just a narrow strip. It just provides them with good soil to grow in and the ability to foster that underground network of fungi and roots. And planting them closely, that's what makes them grow fast. Planting them close to one another because they compete for
And that keeps out all the
Compete for
bad
the sun.
stuff too.
So in all these cases, well, I swear, the one that's 3 years old, you would never guess that was 3 years old. It was
We
just
should put one
planted.
in Franklin Park.
Huh?
There's a huge green space at Franklin Park that's completely empty. We should like put one in over there.
Where's that one? Where's Franklin?
Where's Franklin?
It's off of, like West 10th or between like route, it's off of, I don't know. It's like East 10th Street. It's near the John Horan Garden Apartments.
Oh, okay.
Off of East Lake Road, or not East Lake Road, but Franklin Avenue there.
Yes.
But if you go in like a block or 2 blocks, there's Franklin Park right there. And it's a
Right.
big, huge park. On one side, it's just all grass. There's nothing in it but grass. There's a creek kind of down the middle where the playground's on the east side, but the western end of the park is all just mowed grass.
Is it expensive to install this because of the amount of soil that has to be, like do you need a machine to dig?
Okay, here's the other thing. In York, he's done all by hand.
Wow.
He actually took this kind of a broad fork, it's called, and it's essentially an oversized fork that instead of just a shaft, in this case, 2 shafts and tines, there's also a kind of a pivot thing so that you drive it in and drive the fork in and then pull it back, and the pivots pull the tines up and out and they rake up through the soil. He said he also tried with a subsoiler, but that's a good deal more difficult, and you have to have a tractor and all that and all that stuff. But they've done them all, with the exception of the one they used the subsoiler on. They've done them all by hand.
Wow.
And he's working just with volunteers. At Mercyhurst, we're hoping to do it by hand, using students. So.
Did you have to take out some soil to put the new stuff in?
No.
You just add to what's there. You don't have to remove anything other than
Exactly.
to dig it up to.
Just to loosen it up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What a cool concept.
Oh, it's potentially revolutionary. So the city land bank, the redevelopment authority, has over 100 lots. They said we can plant them all if we want. So integrating with Groundworks, maybe that's one of the things that we could do to plant some of those lots.
Yeah, because once the organization gets running, which I'm not sure how long that will take, they have their own timeline and like projects that they have listed that include green spaces, creeks, but it's very, they want to employ youth, they want to have opportunities for young adults and for volunteers to all be working on projects related to the environment, to food, to kind of transforming vacant land. And it seems like these things could connect.
Mm-hmm.
They have funding too, which is they already have it, which is a
John,
big
when are
deal.
you doing the thing with Mercyhurst?
They're planning it this fall.
Can you invite us to come and see?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We'll make
Yeah.
a fuss about this. It's probably going to be in November, latter part of November, because that's when all the seedlings are available. And you plant a lot. You plant a lot of seedlings, but frankly, seedlings are cheap. That's not the big expense when you're planting small seedlings. And if we can do the digging work by hand, we're presuming we're going to get city compost for the Mercyhurst project. If Lewis was saying that if you can prepare the soil a year ahead of time, you can just put in like wood chips or whatever. You give them time to break down. You can just put in wood chips. But we have compost. The city makes good compost, and we'll arrange to get some of that to dig it into. That'll be the organic component in that soil.
Cool.
Are you gonna do this mitochondria dips too?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. There's actually a bit of a forest up there right behind Mercier. I'm just gonna suggest that we just get a bucket of soil from there and
So you're not gonna buy the actual powder and,
just, and I'll be happy to go out to Forest Island and to get buckets. It's not a big deal. It's a little bit of, I'm sure you all know, a very tiny bit of soil has millions of different organisms in it. And we just want to take advantage of what nature's already figured out how to do and work with it. But the results that they've achieved are just startling.
Thanks for sharing.
All right, I just wanted to talk about that.
No,
Just
that's
so
exciting. We're excited for our invitation to come participate.
All right.
Yeah, there will be plenty of plantings this fall that you guys can all come to.
Okay, great.
So, Stephanie's got an assignment, Sarah's got an assignment, I have an assignment. Anybody else see anything here that you want to help move along?
Someone could draft some questions to ask the city council nominees.
started that on my page here, I can start with some questions.
Okay, all right, great.
So, questions, just, is there a topic, is there a goal that you think, or you just want me to just come up with some questions that might be beneficial? I don't know if there's any direction you guys have, for the questions. It should be related to, like a specific topic, or if we feel there's something that should be more important, or just, hey, what do you, what's your thought about,
Do you know you have an
trees
urban
that-
forest committee?
Yeah, like do they know about the current ordinance? Not that this has to be the question, but they may not be aware of the existing ordinance, and if we know we want to make changes to the existing ordinance, then getting that on their radar could be helpful in some way.
Yeah. But I think
Yeah,
the stormwater and the planning thing somehow.
Yeah, how they're tied together.
Yeah.
That's, I just noticed, I don't know, lately, it's driving me crazy, but I see the parking lots where they planted some trees because they're required to, but here's the parking lot grade. And so what they do is they put a curb with some trees in it here, and then the grade goes down here to the edge where it goes along a curb and into the storm sewers. It's like,
Yeah, the
there's
tree
been
should-
no thought about actually directing that stormwater into where the trees are. Things like that are simple
Yeah.
but
Better
profound.
best management practices, stormwater runoff, stormwater best management practices for green space and healthy trees. I wonder if you want to ask them like a fun question like, what is your fondest memory of a tree or something like that?
I
Like
think the
a
last
fun
question
question.
should absolutely be something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
Your
absolutely,
favorite
yeah,
private
sure.
tree or something.
What's your favorite tree
That's what I was
story?
thinking, Sarah,
yeah, that's really fun. To get them to think
Outdoor
about trees.
experience that you've had or something that's
Yeah.
made you fucking think about tree, I don't know.
That
something like
involve
that.
trees, yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Did you
tree.
grow up climbing a tree at grandma's house?
Yeah, it might be nice. Those kind of questions are more fun.
Yeah. That's a good one.
And it
Okay,
makes them
so
more
Mark's gonna
personable
work on those
too.
questions?
I'll do my best.
All right, thank you.
And if you put them on the drive too, we could kind of work
Yeah,
on
I'll
them
do that.
together a little bit. If anyone else thinks of something, you could throw it on there with
I'll
us.
do that tonight. I'll send an email, let everyone know when I have
Cool.
some just ideas down, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'll put anything related to like a mission or vision statement on Google Drive, so if you hear some words you like, or if you're like, oh, this should definitely be part of the vision,
Very good.
please add it in.
Yep, and I'll get in the habit of putting a fresh agenda on the drive in the folder, and then someone comes up with, thinks of something that they want to, bring up, go ahead and just put it on there. And I think we can just do that moving forward with agendas, so it's not on one person, it's a group, group effort that we can all add to it.
That's good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Those of us without assignments will read what goes into the Google Drive.
Good. Good.
Arbor Day assignment.
Yeah, I
Arbor
think
Day.
yours
Start
was Arbor
Arbor Day
Day,
folder,
Jenny.
too.
I'll think about Arbor Day. I'll come up with some ideas.
Oh, that would be nice.
And one last thing, I just finished a great book
Oh.
about trees called Searching for the Mother Tree by Suzanne Simard. It's a remarkable book.
I've heard of it.
Someone just told me about that, like, within the past week.
It is so good. It is so good.
What was it called?
This is a woman who, from British Columbia, grew up in a timbering family and became a scientist and has spent her whole life establishing what I've been talking about as the basis of the tiny forest, which is a combination of collaboration and competition.
What was the book again, John?
Searching for the Mother Tree.
Oh, okay.
Her last name is Simard, Suzanne Simon. Wonderful book. All right,
Great.
we're adjourned.
Yes.